In 2019, we began to build our dream.
But the journey started long before you were invited to watch.
We walked a path that spanned nearly 2 decades.
There were times of joy, pain, and everything in between.
Our lives have completely changed, and we're ready to tell you how it happened.
We're not holding back.
Our mistakes, regrets,
What we wish we could change, our best decisions.
and if we do it again, you'll hear it all.
Come back in time with us behind the camera and answer the question,
Is self-building worth it?
All right, welcome back to Is Self-Building Worth It? We are going to talk about laying out, doing piers, all that kind of good stuff. Before we get started, if you guys are interested in designing your own barndominium, building, man cave, anything like that, we'll put a link for Back Forwarding Building Company, which is our design company.
Yes.
We'll put a link in there. If you fill it out, the contact form, you'll get contact within 2 business days. We got a great staff, so check that out. Also, we have a Patreon group for self-builders. And this is for the people that want to try to GC their own build. They want to GC and do all of the work. It's for builders that want to get into post frame. It's a great community of people. You get to share your build on there. You get to ask me questions. We have Tuesday conversation. We have lives where we bring on guests. All kinds of good stuff. So check that out. But let's go ahead. I think we're going to start out today just with a couple comments from some of the previous videos here.
Yeah, we've been discussing storm shelters, and so we've gone through what people's options are and stuff. And then in the Midwest, obviously basements are a really popular thing. We had somebody comment on the last video that their township is requiring basements. They say that you have to have a basement with your home, which I've never heard of anything so insane like that. But that's, that's what you have to take into consideration with even the like really strict counties up here in Iowa. There are neighborhoods that are patio homes. They're on a slab. My parents live in one. I mean, so it's not something that isn't common. So that's definitely a first.
But I think that's part of you really gotta do the research on where you think you want to build. I would say before you even buy your piece of property, do a little research, figure out what kind of regulations that county has, because that can really make or break you. It can cause you to have to spend a lot more money, take a lot more time, just make things more difficult.
Yeah, and that's why so we recommend that you start there. We've even had some people that have used that as a gauge if they don't own property of deciding where they're going to build property. I mean, because you think about, there are some places that are a half an hour or less from here that your build experience would be completely different than what we were able to have in this county.
It would be different 10 miles to the north.
Right. So, I mean, just very, very close. So we aren't really losing... we are losing some convenience because we are farther away from the metro area, but we're not losing... Define convenience.
I can walk 50 yards and be in the tree bow hunting. That seems pretty convenient to me.
Right. We're less than 10 minutes to get the kids to school.
I'm 50 steps from an on-site grocery store.
Right. Yeah. We have like the best neighbors in the world, but we can't see each other's houses or hear each other. So, we have privacy, but we still have a great community where we are. So, yes, there's a lot of factors that goes into that. This is a great comment. Building codes are often the biggest impediment to doing things a better way.
Yeah, and that is true because we're dealing with the county right now. They're operating off like the 2015 IRC, which we'll probably save the code talk for later, but yeah, there's, codes doesn't take into account common sense.
Right.
It doesn't take into consideration discretion. There's a lot of things, and I'm just going to throw this out there and catch it if you want. Just because you have a code compliant house does not mean your house is well built.
Yes.
Just ask some of your friends that live in the city that live in a house that had to be code compliant. You're going to find that there's a lot of issues. And on the same hand, just because your house isn't code compliant, keyword is compliant, doesn't mean it isn't a well-built house.
Right. Yes.
End of story.
End of story.
Next
So,
comment.
Yeah, so gravel, this part of the process, there's a lot of gravel involved. What would you say about preparing the gravel site? Ours is an old dairy farm and the drive had daily milk trucks driving on it. So underneath there's tons and tons of gravel, but it's overgrown and most of the gravel has been weeded over. How much of a headache would those weeds be if we just dumped 3-inch gravel on top of those, considering what's underneath?
Well, I mean, if it's all weeded over, I think what I would do is just take a skid steer and maybe scrape off get all the roots, maybe like a couple inches, just skim off a couple inches and you'll probably find out that you have a nice bed of rock. But that's what I would do.
Sure.
Get all of the grass, roots, stuff like that out and then put your gravel down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we already have somebody talking about the insulation, which we're ways off from that part of the project, but we definitely will dive into that because that's been
there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, but let's get into the video.
All right, July 30th. I got some rain coming here soon, so I don't have much time, but as in episode 3 when I showed you guys how to lay out a building. I got all my string lines back up. I did it the same way that I showed you guys, only I based my measurements off the back of this storm shelter, so I was square to the storm shelter.
We've got a ton of footing videos for people to watch. We typically go with a pier footing foundation system on our homes and our buildings, and this, if you're able to go this route, this probably costs about 1/3 of what a continuous footing with frost wall.
Maybe even less than that.
Yeah.
And here's a couple things about a pier foundation. I mean, I'm putting dry set brackets on this. This would be a good example of how you would build
Post frame over a basement.
Post frame over a basement. It would look just like this. And then you would have a sill plate and your joists going across. But anyway, a pier foundation is a good way to build if your county allows you to do it. I would say that a continuous foundation is the best way to build, but you're still going to get good results with a pier foundation. It's like, stepping up, you know what I mean? But
we live in a house on pier footings.
Yeah, because we save thousands and thousands of dollars doing it this way. And if it's done in a way that you protect from frost, if you protect from rodents, all that kind of stuff, it's a great way to build. It's a great way to save a good amount of money.
Right.
There are jurisdictions that will make you have a continuous footing. There are jurisdictions that say, well, there's no way that you can frost protect your slab if you use a pier foundation. But if you think about a monolithic slab or a thickened edge slab. Your concrete's going down maybe 12 inches on a lot of those. So it's really not that much different than having piers and then a 5-inch slab, which you could thicken the edge in between the piers too. So there's not a whole lot of difference. It's just so many people are so used to building homes a certain way that some people just can't envision or see or don't want to do anything that they're not accustomed to.
Well, because a stick framing is impossible without a continuous wall. So you literally cannot build it that way.
Sure.
Whereas post frame, you can actually build it on different foundation types. So, so that's where I think some people's confusion comes in. It doesn't mean that it's a wrong way to do it or it's going to be something that won't perform well. It's just a stick frame home just literally cannot be built that way.
It only has one. You only have literally. You have to have some sort of continuous.
Right. So and so this is an option that people choose whenever they can. Would say this is also an option that if you're trying to DIY your foundation, you probably are going to have better. It's going to be easier for you to do it with limited people.
Yeah.
Because even you can do it with one other person without a problem.
Yeah, I did all this by myself.
You did all of ours by yourself. But even for clients, you can do it with one other guy without a problem. You've even taken Remington.
Yeah.
He's a little worker.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great way to build your home if you're allowed to do it. And, you know, there's just a few things you got to take into consideration to make sure, you know, you're protecting your house from frost if you live in an area where you have frost. I do want to talk a little bit about pier size and engineering. So I build most of all of our buildings on, I use an 18-inch auger, which typically ends up with a 20-inch pier. So if you say you have to have engineered plans, the way an engineer is going to size your piers, unless you have a geotechnical engineer come out and test the PSF, which is pounds per square foot bearing capacity of your soil, they are going to assume that it's 1,500 pounds per square foot, which is really low.
Yeah.
And the reason they do that is because they have to protect themselves and make sure that your house isn't going to sink. So keep that in mind. I'm comfortable in our area building a 72-foot wide building on a 20-inch pier, based on our ground here, my experience. I'm not saying that's not engineered. There are options in making the bottom of your pier bigger. They make bell augers where you use a normal auger to drill your hole, and then you can have this special auger that goes down and then bells the bottom of the hole out. So you're only making the bottom of the pier bigger, which is what you need, is more square footage at the bottom to hold your house up. So keep that in mind. There are formulas out there to calculate what size pier you need. It's pretty simple math. Should I tell them how to do it? Or should we just not do that?
No, I mean, because it's just, there's so many different variables and factors that go into something like that. And so, but the point of the matter is that anytime that you need to have something looked at by an engineer, they have to go with the conservative estimates. So it's, again, one of those things that's not going to say that another way or doing it differently will automatically result in failure. Yeah, it just means that they're being conservative. Like, I talked to an engineer one time that, you know, using that 1,500 number, he said around here, he said it's
3,000.
Yes, he said it's probably at least 3,000. He said, but that's the problem. You can't assume that. He said, but based on every report that he's ever gotten around this area, that's what it is. So, but nobody's going to put their name on it unless they have a guarantee that that's what it is. So those are things to keep in mind. But that engineering, the option of hiring an engineer will still bring you in under what a continuous wall foundation system will cost you, and that is the alternative. So if a county will accept engineered plans, then that's a route that you can take if you really want to go with a pure foundation. The other thing I think to note during this video is that this type of foundation or continuous wall, those are some of the key factors in being able to traditionally finance a barndominium home. So most lenders now will accept a home that has all of your posts staying out of the ground. A traditional pole barn design usually put the posts in concrete or just directly into the dirt. Those are really frowned upon in the lending community because you have the potential for the post to rot. And so if you keep it up out of the ground, that potential is
eliminated.
Yes, it's basically eliminated. And so then that is where your financing options will broaden for sure. We here, like with our team at Back 40 Buildings, we don't design a home that calls for posts going into the ground. Because of that, we don't feel, and I've even talked to a few engineers about that, about pier footings, size of footings, and some will say, well, if we'll get better results if we stick the post in the ground and stuff. And I said, well, what about rot? And they're like, well, yeah, that could happen, but and so it's just, but I'm like, that feels like your wood rotting is almost a guarantee. We've seen a lot of buildings that are not as old as you might think that they are.
Yeah.
And that seems more of a sure thing to happen versus some of the other things.
And it's not that putting a post, there's certain parts of the country where there are dry climates where posts in the ground work pretty well with limited rot. And there's lots of people out there that would want to argue. I'm not concerned about arguing. I'm just telling you, if you don't put your posts in the ground, you're not going to have to worry about rot. It's considered a permanent foundation.
Right.
If you have an engineer that's calling for your posts in the ground because they need more shear or, something, like there's other ways to deal with that, like 1/2-inch plywood on the exterior of your house is gonna beef that up. So there are ways to deal with that, like momentum, like all that you can deal with without putting your posts in the ground. Think about a stick frame house. The wood doesn't go in the ground. It's held to the foundation with 3/8 to 1/2-inch bolts. So there's nothing in that framing that goes into the ground, but yet they can achieve the shear, they can achieve all that. So you can do it in post frame, and it's actually ends up being stronger if you sheet a post frame. So if you live in a high wind area, you can accomplish it with post frame. But that brings me back. My point in this is you need to find an engineer, if you have to go down that road, that is experienced in post frame. You don't want to hire somebody that's never really engineered them because nothing against them, but it's like anything. If you don't have experience, you're not going to know the ins and outs of it. Mm-hmm. But a couple things to talk about here in the video as I'm watching here. The way I have framed these up, it's completely different. I'm going to leave a link in the description on how I do this now. And we'll give you a much easier path to doing your piers versus using 2x4s and small sonotubes. You want to oversize your sonotubes so that you can collapse them within themselves, stick them in the hole, and then there's zero framing that you have to do around the hole. But the key to that is that you have to have a properly prepared site that's nice and level and flat. But we'll leave a link in the description for a really good video on how to do your piers properly that'll give you a better chance of success. Some things that we struggled with on this one is you can't see it in this video, but the concrete driver drove over one of my string line stakes. I think you almost saw it right there. So I was like frantically trying to re-square all my string lines to set my brackets, and I almost ran out of time. I think I did 3 pours for brackets on this, and it was just me and my dad. So that's another thing, is not trying to do everything in one day.
Yeah.
Is just, break it into manageable pieces. Because every time I made a mistake, it was because I was in a hurry to get something done. And so there were some mistakes I made on this pour right here where I had like a 1/2 yard of concrete left, and the concrete driver was just like, hey, you should just pour it around that outside of that pier. And without thinking, I did it, and that concrete flowed around the outside where there was all this fill. And then you'll see later on, we got a bunch of rain and that fill settled, and all that concrete was wrapped around my pier. And so that all that leverage in it tipped the pier. So I ended up having to pull it out.
Yeah.
But those are things you don't think about, and you always make mistakes when you get in a hurry.
Yes. Well, and now your setup is different. You use a concrete bucket, and the concrete company that we work with most of the time, they have a truck that mixes on site. So you're not obligated to you're not keeping anything that's left over, because there is no leftover.
Right.
And so I think that's something that doing this as often as you do, you prefer that for sure, because then you don't have to worry about them running over your string line, because they're not getting anywhere close to the job site anymore.
Right. Yeah, so you have a few options going this route with pier foundation. You have the wet set brackets, which you see me using here. Again, I encourage you to watch the video in the link, because that's a really good video on how to do it really smoothly. But you also have the option that you could use the dry set brackets. I've had a couple clients, they were just a little nervous about the amount of piers they had and making sure that they properly set the brackets, because depending on how hot it is, how dry it is, will determine how fast that concrete sets up and how much time you actually have to set those brackets. I obviously think the ones with the rebar are going to give you a stronger connection, but the dry sets, they are designed to meet all of the ICC standards for uplift, shear, all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be concerned about using them, and it's actually what you would use on a continuous foundation most of the time. And then your third option, which I've had clients that have done this, is the 6x6 precast perma columns, which are concrete posts with the bracket pre-attached. Now that's a whole different animal, but if you're somewhere remote where you can't get concrete truck in, or it's just more difficult to get concrete, that is a great option for you. And you just have to have a piece of equipment to set them because they are heavy.
Mm-hmm. Seeing the kids, they're so little.
I know, look at that corn behind the house.
Where the deers is.
Also in this video about piers, the way I do the porches now is so much easier. Everything I do now is easier because I've done it the hard way and figured out, I'm like, I got to do something different.
Yeah.
But I think, we have a video that will show you how to do all that. All the piers, whether they're the house pier or the porch piers, get samed at the exact same elevation. And then you can just take a 2x4 and slide it under the bracket on your porch piers, and it will set that bracket up perfectly so that your post won't be in concrete on your porch. It'll sit above, so if you ever have to replace that post, you can. And also, it gives you enough drop from your inside slab to your porch slab. It works so good. It's so much less effort. Mostly on a job like this, I can lay out and drill all those piers in one day by myself, where this probably took me a week when I was doing it and having to put all those stakes in and all that stuff.
Right. You're faster because you do it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you did one, you did like 40 footings in a day or something like that not too long ago, I thought it was.
Yeah, I think we've done up to 60 in a day.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot.
But, there's always more than one way to do something, but guys, if I'm telling you to check out a video on how to do something, it's because I've made all the mistakes and I figured out this is a really nice, smooth way to do it.
Yes. And if you're doing this as a DIY build, you're going to do it once, and so you might as well just kind of trust that your recommendations is going to have the best result and the best chance for success.
It's hard for me to tell people to go out and buy a concrete bucket, but that concrete bucket comes from SkidPro, and we'll show it to you. But we use it on all, and they're only, they're right around $2,000 bucks. Mm-hmm. And so we've had tons of clients that have had siblings or buddies that they're designing together, they're building in the same area. Even a bunch of our patrons are in the same area. If you guys go in and buy one of these concrete buckets together, you could help each other out with your footings, and then you could sell that thing in a heartbeat and recover most of your money.
Right.
So it would definitely be worth the investment. Now, there are parts of the country that are really flat. Back where I came from in Illinois, you hardly had to do any site prep. You could just go in and you just have this nice, beautiful, flat piece of property. But here in southern Iowa, it's just not like that.
Yeah. Look at those nice tan arms.
I know.
Biceps.
You like that?
Mm-hmm. Wearing some cut-off shorts and some nasty shoes.
Yeah, look at that. Those are probably 10-year-old shoes.
Yeah. I'm surprised you don't have pool slides on.
I repurposed those Duluth pants too. I probably traded.
Those aren't Duluth pants. I thought those were from your cop days. You wore those.
I know. Those are probably, I probably chased a bunch of criminals down in those things. Those
they
are
are
Duluth.
Yeah.
I guarantee you I caught a criminal in those.
Yeah.
Look at those calves. Looks like a catfish belly. How are you feeling at this point? Do you even remember? You were out there.
I mean, I was out there.
With the kids.
I remember seeing that video initially, and I thought that I needed to lose some weight because I gained some weight when we moved here, and now I look at it and I'm like, oh dang, if I could be that skinny again. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, August of 19, we were in the townhouse for the majority of this build until we actually moved into it. And then, gosh, the kids were still so little. Lindley wasn't even 2. Mm-hmm. So I had one more year. Our oldest was going into kindergarten, and we made the decision because we knew that where we were living, she'd spend 1 year in that school and then move.
Right.
So I opted to homeschool her that year, which was really tough. So, at that point, your sister had moved to Iowa. So where we were living, we were renting a townhouse, and his sister and family, so our niece and nephews, they got to be like right across the street from the kids, and I think that helped a lot. I think for both of our families, I think we both needed something from the other, and it was really good for the kids to be able to be together with their cousins because we had lived just a couple minutes from them in Illinois, and so it was kind of devastating for them to not be able to see each other. And so, yeah, because our girls are the same grade in school and stuff like that, so I think that was a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, it worked out well, but I think if I could do it over again, I would have definitely bought a single wide or something I could have pulled up onto the property to live there.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned this before, but like looking back, we think like there was a way that we could have structured our living situation that would have been a lot more efficient and would have saved us money and all that kind of stuff. And so like if we were to do this again today, we could make those adjustments. But at the time, I think that
it went well.
I think we made the decisions that ended up like being as good as they could be, because we don't know how it would have turned out if we had just moved everybody down here right away. We don't know if like your sister would have ended up moving to the area and her family. So, you just don't know how something would have turned out if we weren't in the position that we were. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's, kind of that all's well that ends well.
Yeah. I remember when I once I got all the piers done, I flew the drone over the build site, and I was like, man, I'm pumped, because like I finally getting to the point that I was just desperately wanting to get to, and that was framing it. Yeah. I think my goal was to start framing like in April, and I didn't start until August. Yeah,
so I think for me, I was feeling like
this dude is so slow.
Kind of, I think. Like, I was like, kind of like, oh my gosh, we're never gonna ever get to move into this house if like we are taking 6 months and there's still nothing that resembles a house.
What's really going on that property?
Right. Well, yeah.
It's kicking my feet up.
I think I was thinking, I think I did think that from time to time because I was like, I have no assistance. I'm drowning trying to take care of these kids, and like there's still no house at all. So yeah, it was not necessarily the brightest, shiningest moment.
Yeah, and you didn't necessarily watch the videos either.
No, I was not invested.
Yeah, I don't think you watched the videos. You were like saying I need to put out more videos, but you weren't watching the videos.
Oh yeah, no.
We need more videos, Paul.
Yeah.
But yeah, so couple things to wrap this up. One, I'm going to leave a link to a really good video on how to do piers properly and efficiently. If you want pricing on Midwest Perma column wet set brackets, dry set brackets, the Perma columns, we can get you a good deal on those. So let us know if we can help you out with that. And also SkidPro attachments. They're sending me their new concrete bucket. I should have that any time, so I'm going to test that out for them. So you should check their website out. If you decide to buy anything from them, make sure you say that Mr. Post Frame sent you. That would probably be a good thing for you. But I think that's about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I wish I was like starting to frame this again. So. But anyway, as always, we appreciate you watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share with your friends, and we will catch you on the next video.